Happy holidays, folks. Welcome back to #AskGSM here today, episode 526, the final episode of 2023 for December 27th, 2023. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and enjoying your holiday season. Final full week of 2023. We got a lot of questions to get into here today for our final show of 2023, so we'll waste no time. But if you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Forewarning though, I have yet to kind of put the questions together in an organized, coherent format for this week, meaning that I have not put them in a document. So if you hear your question here, and then again a little bit later on, not the same question, but from the same person, because typically, as you guys know, I put them all from the same person, from the same platform, in the same area. I haven't done that yet. So if they're all over the place, that's why. That's how crazy this Christmas week has been. But we'll start with the YouTube questions, starting with Chris W. from YouTube. His first question was, how do you feel about Peter Rosenberg on WWE TV? I like the guy personally, but I feel he's very cringe and annoying on WWE TV, especially on Monday's Christmas special, the dated and just plain bad pop culture references and his overhyping of Jade Cargill. Again, I have, or what did he say here? Oh, again, I have nothing against him, and I bet he's a really friendly guy, but I just don't like him on TV. What about you? It's funny, I've never met Peter Rosenberg face-to-face. I did a podcast with him with Randy Cruz a couple of months ago. Real nice guy when we chatted over the podcast earlier this year. I've never really been a fan of his on-air WWE TV work. Like the same thing with Sam Roberts. I like Sam Roberts as well. I've been a fan of his work for a very long time. I've met him in person a bunch. He's a cool guy as well. Their WWE TV work is not bad. I mean, I'm sure I would do a far worse job than they do, and they have a lot more on-air TV experience, stuff like that, podcasting, radio experience. He just, I don't know, he rubs a lot of people the wrong way. At this point, I don't really care one way or the other, and they're not overexposed either. I don't really watch the pre-shows. I didn't watch Monday's Christmas show. I was busy doing pretty much anything else. If it wasn't a first-run edition of Raw, I was not watching, so I did not check that out. He's not on the SmackDown Lowdown anymore, thank God, him and Sam Roberts. They just weren't really good on that show. I don't really care about their analysis. If I did, I'd go out of my way to listen to their podcast. And usually on the WWE platforms, they're like what they're saying and the opinions they're giving really aren't their own most of the time. It's like they kind of have to balance out, all right, you're picking this person to win, I'm going to pick this person to win. And it's not insider knowledge, it's just plain WWE jargon to fill an hour of TV time. I don't hate Peter Rosenberg. I don't know if he's really that annoying. I mean, I might used to think that a couple of years ago. Same with Sam Roberts. At this point, I don't really care because I don't really see enough of them on WWE TV to form that opinion. They used to be all over, like, they were on the Raw talk shows and the pre-show panels, and they probably still are. I don't really watch those anymore because they don't put matches on those shows anymore, so I don't really give a shit. So I don't really have an opinion one way or the other person. I'm like, at Micah Does It, his first question was, why is WrestleMania 17 in a lot of fans' eyes held as the greatest WrestleMania, and is it yours? So I think it is. I mean, the funny thing is that I didn't grow up watching WrestleMania 17. I didn't start watching wrestling until 2008. So that wasn't my magnum opus for WrestleMania. That wasn't my greatest WrestleMania of all time growing up because I hadn't seen it in full until like years later. Upon having seen it for the first time in full, probably, I think when the network launched, actually, that was the first pay-per-view I ever watched, funnily enough, in 2014, I can understand why. I mean, that to a lot of people, I mean, I think I wrote an entire article I can direct you to. If you just Google WrestleMania 17, greatest of all time, Bleacher Report, Graham GSM Matthews, my article from 2020 will probably pop up. For the article, I actually did the research, and I'd already gone back and watched the show in full a few times before this point, but I went back and watched it in full shortly after COVID started in 2020, because there was really nothing else going on at that time. So I watched all of WrestleMania 17 in full back in May of 2020, and I wrote an entire article as to why it's the greatest WrestleMania of all time. The main event is one of the greatest of all time. The twist is one of the most memorable, maybe not necessarily the best, with Steve Austin turning on Rock, attacking him with a chair, Vince McMahon and him finally forming an alliance, and Vince helping him win the WWE Championship. Bad timing with it being in Texas because he got cheered anyway. But the match itself was great. That Mania, to me, I mean, the lead reason, in my opinion, is that it has a little bit of everything. It has some really, really good matches, a lot of memorable moments, like the Linda McMahon thing. The Vince and Shane shit was just an absolute mess. But it was WWE over-the-top sports entertainment, have you, at its best. Like, it was completely crazy, a hot crowd that night in Texas, some great hardcore matches, one of the greatest ladder matches of all time, the triple threat TLC match between Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys and the Hardys, one of the best tag team matches in company history. I think Chyna won the women's championship back on that show, did she not? I forgot what the women's match on that show was. But the main event itself, Triple H and Taker, an excellent match. I'm not a big Attitude Era guy. I never have. But I can go back and watch that show and thoroughly enjoy it for everything it has to offer. It just has a little bit of everything, and in my opinion, it perfectly encapsulates and represents what a prosperous period that was for WWE. So I think it's got to be the greatest of all time. There's a couple other that come, there's a few other Mania installments that come close that I would regard as being amazing. Even some recent ones. I thought 39, 38 were back-to-back amazing Manias. 30 and 31 also excellent. There's a lot of great Manias. I think a lot of people can universally agree that 17 is the best. And you might think that I would think differently because, again, I didn't grow up watching that era. I'm not a big Attitude Era mark at all. I'm probably in the minority of people who don't really like going back and watching Attitude Era shows because that's not really my style personally. Won't say that a lot of the current shows are better than those, but there's a lot of stuff today that I think is better than back then. But I can still sit here and tell you that WrestleMania 17 is the greatest of all time. And again, for more details and analysis, I wrote a whole article about it on Bleacher Report 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago now, crazy. You can just Google it and you'll probably find it. His second question, what are your 3 major wrestling predictions for 2024? I don't know if I just have 3, and again, I hate doing this shit every year because I'm always fucking wrong or just not good at it. I probably got to go back and listen to what I had to say about 2023 because I'm sure I was way off. These aren't really bold. I'm glad you said major and not bold because, I'm not the biggest bold opinion person as far as, I think John Cena will show up in AEW, blah, blah, blah. I don't think for a few different things here. I don't think The Rock will wrestle. I think that's pretty obvious. I don't think The Rock will wrestle at WrestleMania. Will he make an appearance? No. Will Stone Cold wrestle? I'm going to say no. I do think Punk walks out of Mania the new champion, and I think he turns heel either at that event or shortly thereafter. Will he join up with Paul Heyman? No, but that would be cool. I think Roman finally drops the championship this year at Mania. I think Gunther also loses his championship at WrestleMania. I think Rhea Ripley loses her championship at WrestleMania. I don't know if all 3 long-reigning champions will finally lose at Mania, but I think they should. So I think that would be the show to do it at, in my opinion. So I think that'll happen this year. I do think MJF will. This isn't 2024. I do think he loses the championship to Joe at World's End. I'm kind of on the fence about that right now. I'm not really sure 100% because I could see it being Swerve Strickland. I do think Swerve Strickland will be a world champion in AEW in 2024. I don't know what Ricky Starks' contract looks like. I could see him going to WWE this coming year. Same with Malachi Black and Andrade for sure. I think as soon as their contracts expire, if it's this coming year, they're as good as gone. Keith Lee too, but I don't think Keith Lee's deal is up this year. I could be wrong. If it is, he's gone too. I think he stays through the entirety of the year. So there's that. I'm trying to think what else. Those aren't really, again, major or bold by any means. I think WWE signs Julia. I'm kind of going with what's likely. I think Mercedes Moné goes back to WWE as well. I think Jade Cargill ends up on the SmackDown brand. I feel like Raw might make more sense, but Raw already has like a lot of heels between Rhea and Nia, Shayna, Zoe, among others. I don't know if she goes to Raw. I guess she could go to Raw, but SmackDown would automatically, instantly... they just lost Charlotte for a long while due to her injury. If she goes to SmackDown, they have that instant match possibility with her and Bianca, although I would hold off on that until a bigger stage, like a Mania or a SummerSlam or something like that, because that can be a big money match if built up properly. Same thing with her and Becky and other people like that. Her and Charlotte as well, but Charlotte won't be back for a while. I don't really know if I have any other major predictions off the top of my head right now. As far as like free agent predictions, I think Alexander Hammerstone, I think Camille go to TNA. I think Camille's absolutely going to TNA. I can see Hammerstone going to AEW, and I would like to see him in AEW. I don't know if he goes to AEW. If they bring in him and Richard Holiday at the same time, that would be amazing with MJF. I could see that being a real possibility. Do I see it definitely happening? I don't know. I think Hammerstone might go to AEW, or rather to TNA, get a run there. If not, go to WWE, or probably not WWE at this point, but probably AEW soon after. I could see him going to TNA first. Grizzled Young Vets, I know they just said they were popping up in TNA. I could see them signing a deal with them long term. Probably better there than like Ring of Honor or AEW. Obviously not going back to WWE right now, if at all. TNA is probably the best logical landing spot for them. I could see that. As far as like the free agent signings, I already talked about that, like the Dolphs and the Mansoors and fucking Matt Riddle and people like that. So I won't really talk about that. But as far as other free agents, I think I mentioned all of them there. I do think Drew, Seth, and Becky all stay with WWE. With Drew, I think he stays in WWE, but I think he does take time off first. I think when his contract comes due, and whenever that's going to be, the spring, the summer, I do think he doesn't re-sign, but pulls a Gargano and doesn't have a kid necessarily. I mean, I guess he could. But I think he takes time off and then comes back a little bit later on in the year. Does he show up at All In? I mean, that's probably the biggest bold prediction I can make. Does Drew leave WWE, and then instead of going back to WWE as expected, he goes to AEW and shows up at All In? That would be pretty surreal and very possible. I mean, CM Punk and Edge fucking swapped companies this past year. So really, in the last couple of months alone, mind you. So really anything is possible. But speaking of All In, I do think Will Ospreay headlines that show, walks out of that show either still or the new AEW World Champion. That to me makes the most sense. I think that's pretty much it. I think Cody's the one to finish the story and beat Roman at Mania. I think there's a pretty decent chance Roman retains. I fucking hate to say that. And you might say to yourself, why would they have Cody lose 2 years in a row? I mean, you can also ask yourself, why have him lose this past year? To extend the record and make it more historic, which would be fucking dumb. I'll get into the Roman stuff soon enough, but that's way more than 3. But those are my wrestling predictions for 2024. Probably most of them will not happen, but a lot of them are safe predictions, so we'll see. Let's see. And also from Mike, if Triple H could come out of retirement and have his final match with a story and a build, who in current WWE would make for a great opponent? I don't need to see Triple H come back for one more match, even if he wasn't retired, because a lot of those Triple H matches by the end, I just didn't give a fuck about. Like the Batista stuff I liked. The match I liked, to an extent. It wasn't a great match at all, but it was decent enough, I thought, in my opinion anyway. But that was very slow in plotting. The Randy Orton match at Super Showdown, not great. Some of the matches he was having at the end with John Cena, again, Orton, people like that, didn't really need to see that shit again. But if he was to come back and if he was healthy and was able to wrestle, what opponent would make the most sense? Only 2 names come to mind for me at this point. And both people have come back to the company since Triple H has retired. Cody Rhodes and CM Punk. CM Punk is the match we were supposed to get at WrestleMania 30, the match we did get at Night of Champions 2011, and Triple H beat him. So Punk would obviously get his win back. Either one of these guys would beat Triple H, obviously. But the story is there with both guys. With CM Punk, you could tell the story that he walked out of the company partially due to the fact that Triple H was running things at that point, didn't like Triple H, just never liked Triple H, never put him over 12 years ago. The putting over thing is weird. I've said this before about AEW. It's weird when they say that shit, because it's like, when you WWE doesn't incorporate that sort of stuff into their storylines usually. But when you say like, oh, this person buried me or whatever. I mean, when Bray Wyatt said that Cena beating him changed the trajectory of his career in 2014, it did. But he didn't say, I mean, I guess he did say he buried him or whatever, which is kind of weird. But like, he didn't say, oh, he refused to lose to me. Because then like, what's different about this upcoming match? Or like, is he then choosing to lose to you then? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's weird. Like, it was fake then, but it's real now? That's the weird thing. So I wouldn't really go down that route. But what was I saying? Oh, with the Punk thing. I think of the 2, honestly, I would rather see the Cody match. I'm sure we got a Triple H Cody Rhodes match back in fucking 2009 when DX was feuding with Legacy. I'm talking like a big-time program with Cody Rhodes being the performer he is now. The Triple H Punk match probably was a lot better in 2011 than it would be in 2024, 2023. So I would probably go with the Cody match because you could tell the story of Cody idolizing Triple H and taking shots at him while gone from the company, the whole throne thing, probably not directly referencing it because they never really directly reference AEW, but you can kind of allude to it and mention like, you know, listen, you came back here for me, I signed your checks now, and blah, blah, blah. You could tell the whole story, I think, a better story with Cody Rhodes and Triple H than you could with Punk and Triple H, which also has a great story, but we've already seen it before and it's not going to be as good as it was in 2011. The promos, the match itself probably, even though there is a real history there, I would probably go the Cody Rhodes match, in my opinion. Also from Micah, if Sasha Banks returns to WWE, do you think they should pair her up with Jade Cargill on Raw? Maybe a tag match with them at WrestleMania 40. No, I just feel like Jade's a big enough star on her own, and even if people don't know her, she should shine on her own when she first comes up. Not as a bodyguard, not as a partner for someone. The tag team stuff is dead. I mean, the tag team division for the women, they should just get rid of in favor of like a mid-card title for the women. They're never going to do that, but that's what I would do. And Sasha coming back, if she's going to team with anyone, it would be Bayley. Bayley and Sasha makes the most sense, and that's not even the Mania match. The Mania match to me has got to be Bayley and Io one-on-one. Not a four-way, not a tag team. It's got to be Bayley, Io one-on-one, with Bayley, in my opinion, winning and taking that title. That's what I would do. Sasha should go off and do her own thing. Jade should go off and do her own thing, probably on separate brands. I mean, I said Jade earlier should probably go to SmackDown, so they might end up on the same show. Sasha, if she comes back, has to go where with Bayley is, on SmackDown as a babyface, reuniting with her or bringing her back to the babyface side, what have you. So no, I would not have them team up. Down the road, maybe. I know Bianca, when I interviewed her in October, expressed interest in teaming with Jade at some point. That wouldn't be a bad idea either. Right away, I mean, I would rather see Bianca and Jade as a tag team right away than Sasha and Jade, because Sasha is going to be such a big star when she comes back that there's a lot more stuff to do with her on her own than in a tag team. Ideally, neither of them should be in a tag team from the get-go. I mean, Sasha with Bayley, sure, but Sasha should be doing her own thing, and Jade should also definitely be doing her own thing. Chris W. from YouTube. Suppose Roman Reigns doesn't drop the title at WrestleMania and defeats Cody, as is the current plan according to an article I read recently. Before we go any further, I don't know what fucking article you read. I have not seen that. It sounds like they changed plans with Roman, the Mania stuff, up until like the day of. Like, I'm not saying that the plan right now is for Cody to win, but those are decisions they don't really make their mind up with until like the day of the show. It might be better now with Triple H in charge, but that sort of shit, it sounds like it goes back and forth up until the day of the event. So I don't think the plan is for Roman to win. I think there's a chance that Roman can win, a pretty good chance actually, and hold the championship for another year until they hit the 5-year mark, which would be fucking terrible. But, you know, I wouldn't believe that entirely. Anyways, question continues. Do you think the fans will completely turn on Roman and lose faith in Triple H as a booker? Or do you think this continues to drag out the bloodline, a storyline that's badly on life support because they don't know how to end it all? I think that's part of it. As far as they don't know how to end it, I'm hoping Triple H, being a mostly sensible booker, I would say for the most part, would know that Cody makes the most sense to do it. He probably thought giving him the adversity route, going the adversity route, dragging this on further for another fucking year was the right way to go. 8-9 months on, I still disagree with that. I still think that Cody should have won at WrestleMania. That was pretty stupid. Even if he wins it at Mania, it would have been a bigger moment to me if he did it a year ago. Roman being champion for another year accomplishes nothing. We got some good matches and programs out of it. That stuff you can still do without Roman being champion. The Bloodline stuff was great. Roman did not need to be champion for that. I said that before Mania. He could have feuded with Jay going into SummerSlam, but it did not have to be for the championship. And they just did it anyway. Yeah, I think with Roman, I don't think people would turn on him because people already have turned on him. People have already turned on the Bloodline stuff and Roman being champion and him being overexposed, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't really worry about that. I would worry, as you mentioned, people losing more faith in Triple H as a booker. Him beating Cody, Roman Reigns beating Cody, definitely played a factor in that, and people already losing any goodwill and good faith they had towards WWE since Triple H took over. When that shit happened, people were like, well, that was pretty fucking dumb. I can't believe I thought they would do the right thing finally and give us what we wanted. If they don't do that at Mania, then yes, I lose a lot of faith in Triple H as a booker, because I don't know how you make that same mistake twice. Once is bad enough, twice would be bad. And people might be saying, well, what are you talking about? Clearly Cody's going to win. At this point, you never fucking know. And maybe that lack of doing the right thing ultimately aids WWE in the end, because it makes things more unpredictable, sure, but if they do the wrong thing again, it makes it that much worse. It's not like, this is the first time they've done the wrong thing and it just blah, blah, blah. No, they've done the wrong thing a lot in the past. So if they do it again, it's that much dumber or stupider, whatever, that they more egregious. They would pull it off yet again. The dumb decision, the wrong thing to do, the wrong call to make. So hopefully Cody wins and we don't have to worry about that. People have already turned on Roman, the Bloodline stuff. I mean, I have. I'm just ready to move the fuck on, but I know I've got Mania in my sights. I don't want to complain too much about what we're getting in the meantime. The Roman Knight stuff was good. The Roman Orton stuff should be good. And everything else involving that. That's solid and all. But I think it's got to be Cody winning at Mania so we can finally move the fuck on. His next question, at the end of his career, how would you view Sami Zayn's career in WWE? I would say it's a massive success. I don't know if anyone ever thought he would have the level of success that he did in WWE on the main roster, specifically when he got signed 10 plus years ago. He was a hit in NXT, had a lot of success there, came up to the main roster, had success with Kevin Owens from the get-go in their feud, but really floundered for that first year on the main roster. I think a lot of people forget about that. I don't think he was on the main card at WrestleMania 33. He was at WrestleMania 32, not at 33. He was in the Battle Royal on the pre-show, the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. He didn't really do a lot until turning heel. When he turned heel, became a great heel character, had the run with Owens, the success as Intercontinental Champion, and then everything he's done in the past 2 years, the Bloodline storyline and his involvement in with it specifically, will go down as one of the greatest stories ever told in WWE. And he had a lot to do with that from 2022 to earlier this year. The match with Roman was great in Montreal, Elimination Chamber. That was an awesome atmosphere. I was there for that one. That was great. The tag team title run, the tag team title win. He main evented WrestleMania. Did anyone ever actually imagine Sami Zayn getting a WrestleMania main event? The answer is probably no. So I would say, hopefully at some point he gets to be a world champion, the Universal Champion, WWE Champion, whatever. He's already been NXT Champion, if you count that, I guess. But like for a world title on the main roster, hopefully he gets that opportunity at some point. I would have said there was no chance of that happening a few years ago, but with the way they've completely turned his career around as a babyface, anything is possible, especially now that we have 2 world championships back. So I would say at the end of the day, if he were to retire tomorrow, he would absolutely go down as a Hall of Famer in this company. You can always make the argument, Coco Beware and all these other people. Yeah, they didn't do jack shit. Sami Zayn, obviously, compared to most of them, is a Hall of Famer. He's had a great career, a lot of great matches, and a lot of great stories along the way as well. A lot of great characters, too. Last YouTube question, also from Chris. He says, what are your favorite and least favorite Pixar movies? I always loved Toy Story 1 through 3. He said 2 and 3. I had the pure joy of watching in theaters. Me too, I think. Monsters, Inc. He also said another movie I had the great fortune I saw in the cinemas. Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Up, WALL-E, and Ratatouille are all classics, but my favorite is Inside Out due to the clever and creative plot, memorable characters, and the accurate depictions of how a young child behaves and the emotions that said child feels. My least favorite are A Bug's Life and the Cars movies, and even though it wasn't a Pixar movie, I've never been too high on Frozen from 2013. Felt too cold for me, pun intended. What are your favorite and least favorite Pixar movies? Great question. I agree and I disagree on some of your choices there. Toy Story 1 through 3 is probably, obviously, the best trilogy in Pixar. There's not many of them. There's not a lot of trilogies, but, Cars, I don't have the full list in front of me. My favorite is Monsters, Inc. My favorite, far and away, is Monsters, Inc. You said it was one of your favorites. I still feel that movie is underrated. It's so fucking funny. The sequel's great, too. I really enjoyed Monsters University. I rewatched that a couple of months ago. That was great, too. The show I'm in the midst of watching right now, it came out 2-3 years ago, but I'm finally getting a chance to watch it, and that's a good show as well. The first movie's a classic. That is easily far and away my favorite. Second favorite is also Bug's Life. Well, another one of my top favorite. It's close. I know you said that was one of your least favorites. Again, a fucking funny movie, great voice cast, clever concept, just awesome. Fucking love Bug's Life. Great movie. I'm trying to think what else. Those are my top 2. Probably Toy Story 2 or Toy Story 3. Probably Toy Story 2. You could say really any of those 3, and Toy Story 4 is great as well, I thought. I really enjoyed that one. Just a perfect saga, really. You could say any of 1 through 3, and you wouldn't be wrong. I kind of say the same with Back to the Future. I say, Back to the Future is my favorite movie. Really, it's 2, but it's really the whole continuous 1 through 3 story. With Toy Story, I would say the same thing, but if I really had to choose, I would probably say 2 most likely. I think all 3 are great. 2 definitely. The other ones are great. I love The Incredibles. The Incredibles 2 I really enjoyed. Finding Nemo's another classic. I have not seen Inside Out in full. I've seen most of it. I haven't seen it in full, so I can't say that one. I think Moana's a Pixar movie. I only watched that for the first time with RJ about a year ago, and that was a good movie too. What else is there? Finding Nemo I loved. The Incredibles is great. Really, that whole early phase of Pixar movies are amazing. The ones that have come out in the past 10 years have been very hit or miss. I didn't really care for Turning Red. I thought it was a good movie. I didn't think it was as good as a lot of people were saying. I mean, maybe just because I can't relate to it. A lot of the things they kind of touch upon in that movie don't really relate to me. I guess you could say the same thing with like Soul, for example. But Soul I thought was a better movie in my opinion. I really enjoyed Soul. I haven't seen Luca. I saw Elemental. I thought that was good. Not great, but an enjoyable movie. I thought it was good. The sequels I liked. I liked Toy Story 4, Finding Dory, Monsters University, Incredibles 2. I liked all of those movies. I thought they were all great. There were probably more. I haven't seen Brave. I know RJ's seen Brave. I haven't seen Brave myself. So I don't really have a top like 3 or bottom 3 favorite, like least favorite, because they're all good to great. I don't think I've ever even seen Cars 2. Cars 3 I only watched for the first time a few years ago, and I thought it was good. The first one I love. I really like Cars 1 a lot. So it's tough to say. It is. I mean, I guess the least favorite would be the ones I haven't seen in full, like Brave. Like, I don't really give a fuck about Brave. Good Dinosaur, I don't give a fuck about. Cars 2, I'll probably watch at some point. I've heard it's the worst out of all of them, but, probably that one maybe, even though I haven't seen it. So it's tough to say. But, like, all the ones that came out from Toy Story to, like, Ratatouille I really liked. I didn't really care for WALL-E. WALL-E's good. I've seen that a few times. I don't really care about WALL-E, to be honest with you. I just don't. I don't know. I thought it was good, but it's not one of my favorites at all. Up is another amazing one. I rewatched that a couple weeks ago. That was just an amazing movie. Up is up there as well. No pun intended. Or maybe pun intended. So probably like, I hate to say like WALL-E, because again, it's not a bad movie. I just don't really care about it. Same thing with like the latter Cars movies and Brave. I just haven't seen that movie. Turning Red 2, didn't really care that much about it. But I thought Soul was great, and I'd have to go back and think of the ones from like the later 2000s. Like Inside Out I haven't seen. Elemental I did see, didn't really care too much about it. And I'm sure there were other ones, but I don't have the full list in front of me. The Facebook questions, we start with, we'll go back to Chris L. We'll take a break from Chris for a moment. Start with No L from Facebook first. He said, first and foremost, Happy New Year's, everyone. I appreciate that. Thank you as well. Happy New Year as well to you. Their first question was, do you see either Cora Jade winning the NXT Women's Championship in 2024 or going to the main roster? I could probably see her winning the championship, because if it's not her, I'm not sure who else beats Lyra. I don't think it's Tiffany. I don't think it's Blair in a couple weeks. I do think they save Cora for either Vengeance Day or Stand and Deliver, and she wins the championship there. That is my prediction. I mean, they have a lot of good heel women in that division. Tiffany, Cora, and Blair are really 3 great names to build around. Tiffany's on her way up, and you don't call up Tiffany and Cora at the same time, I don't think. So I would say give the championship to Cora first before going up later on in 2024. And their second question, do you see any surprises coming in 2024 for wrestling? Yes, I do. I already discussed this earlier. If 2023 was any indication of how crazy the wrestling world can get, I think we're in for a real whirlwind in 2024. I think 2022 was also nuts. I mean, Vince McMahon fucking retired and then he came back in 2023, among other things. So I think 2024 will be equally unpredictable and wild and crazy and exciting. I think probably the biggest bold prediction I can make, as I mentioned earlier, is Drew McIntyre leaving WWE under the impression he'll be back, even though he's not, and then he goes to AEW instead. He doesn't go back, he goes to AEW instead and shows up at All In. That's probably the craziest thing I could see happening in my logical, feasible mind. I didn't see Edge going to AEW in 2023, so again, I really have no fucking clue. But I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see in 2024 and what it has in store. Chris L., a couple questions here. We'll go through these quickly because I don't have too much time and we have a lot of Twitter questions as well. His first question was, what are the best and worst early Marvel films? For me, the worst are The Hulk from 2003 with a miscast Eric Banner, Spider-Man 3 and Ghost Rider with Nicolas Cage, both of which I saw in theaters and didn't care for either of them. For the best, I really enjoy watching the first Spider-Man movie from 2002 with Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst and Willem Dafoe, Iron Man with Robert Downey Jr., and the first 2 X-Men movies from 2000 and 2003. What are your picks? Most of those I'm sure I've seen. I definitely watched Ghost Rider as like a joke, because like my college roommate used to wear a jacket that was like Ghost Rider-esque, and we would call it the Ghost Rider like leather jacket. And we finally watched it. I remember nothing from it except for the fact that Nicolas Cage was in it. I've seen the first two X-Men movies, probably the third one at some point. I don't really remember much about them. I know the first one was really good. I haven't seen them recently enough to really comment on them, so I can't call them my favorite. Same thing with the Hulk 03 movie. I've seen it, not in a long time. Soon after it came out, I remember very little from it, so I can't say whether it's good or not. You're including MCU movies. These aren't MCU movies except for the Iron Man movie. The Iron Man movie is amazing. That's probably my favorite of everyone that you mentioned. The Spider-Man movies are also good. They're not MCU, but the Tobey Maguire ones were all really good. The first two were great. The third one, not so much, with like Venom and shit and the Sandman. And I like Willem Hayden Church, but, it's not the best movie at all. The first two are classics, though. I rewatched those before seeing the No Way Home movie a few years ago. So, I would probably say my favorite early Marvel movies, if we're talking like from the 2000s, it would be the first Iron Man, Spider-Man 1, and Spider-Man 2. The other ones I don't really remember too much. I guess the least favorite would be Hulk from 03, Spider-Man 3, Ghost Rider, because I remember very little from them. They didn't make a big enough impression for me to remember those movies. But that's not to say like the X-Men movies aren't good, because I don't remember anything from them. I know the first one's good. I just haven't seen it recently enough to really comment on it. 2 might be good as well. I heard the third one wasn't great. I plan on rewatching those before Deadpool comes out next year, so ask me again in like 6 months, and we'll probably have a better, I might have a better opinion on things by that point. His next question, he said, hope you and Alexis had a great Christmas. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Hope you had a great Christmas as well. He said, who do you pick as your MVPs for both the men and women for both WWE, AEW, NXT, and Impact Wrestling? For WWE, I pick Rhea Ripley for the women and Gunther for the men. For AEW, I pick Toni Storm for the women and MJF for the men. For NXT, I pick Tiffany Stratton for the women and Ilya Dragunov for the men. And for Impact, I pick Trinity for the women and Speedball Mike Bailey for the men. What about you? I agree with literally all of those, and I'm not just saying that to not like waste time or whatever. No, I saw your list, and I'm like, I literally agree with every single one of those. The only one I would change is Mike Bailey. He had a lot of great matches in 2023. Did he have a single big win? Like, he didn't have a lot of direction this year for Impact. He had a lot of amazing matches, and also on the indies, but I'm talking specifically what's been on Impact programming. The match with Will Ospreay was amazing, among other people. I'm thinking, like, matches that he's had that I can, like, feuds and storylines. I'm sure he had a few, like with Jonathan Gresham, for example. I wouldn't say him. Josh Alexander was hurt for like half the year. I'm going to go Alex Shelley. Alex Shelley's been a consistent force throughout the entire year. He's been world champion since June. He really stepped up as a main event player and has really knocked it out of the park. So I'm going to go Alex Shelley for Impact's MVP for the men. But for the women for Impact, I do agree it would be Trinity, in my opinion. Their next question: who is the more complete package of the two, Charlotte Flair or Becky Lynch? Both are very successful in their careers, but I feel like even though Charlotte may have more success, I always feel Becky was more complete in terms of character, promos, and ability of putting someone over even in defeat. Charlotte obviously has 14 world titles, but when we really look at it, none of them had any value, and none of them were the least bit memorable, especially her ludicrous NXT Women's Championship reign, where she put over no one and wasn't a draw in the ratings. On top of that, her promos are flat. Man, he really does not like Charlotte. He said, on top of that, her promos are flat and have no emotion. She is one-dimensional, boring, and a dreadful babyface. And again, she never puts over any of her opponents. Man, tell me how you really feel. Whereas with Becky, she cuts promos that have passion and articulation. Has played both face and heel convincingly. And each time she won a title, she made it feel like something, especially in her fantastic recent NXT Women's title reign. On top of that, she can have a quality match with Bianca last year, and this year with Zoe Stark, Trish Stratus, Tiffany Stratton, and Lyra Valkyria. So while Charlotte may have more reigns, I feel Becky is more complete and has done far more for the women's division than her. What about you? I mean, that's a lot to say that I completely agree. You didn't really make a lot of, you didn't tell a lot of lies there in that paragraph. I know sometimes I'll disagree with what you got to say, Chris, but I think overall you really hit the nail on the head. I think Becky Lynch is the more complete performer. I won't go too in detail about it just because I already kind of answered a very similar question a few months ago, earlier this year, maybe from you, about who the better technical wrestler was between Becky and Charlotte. I think I said Becky. I think Becky's the better performer of the two in the ring, on the mic. She's more of a complete package. Charlotte is one of the best they've ever had. I think that goes without saying. People might disagree. I'm not saying her title reigns are better. I would go for that. With Becky for that. But I think overall the better performer in the ring, on the mic, character, storylines, blah, blah, blah. I got to go Becky as well. I mean, that's not really, to me, much of a discussion. Unless you're a big Charlotte fan, I guess. And I like Charlotte a lot. I think Charlotte's great. But I just think Becky's better overall than she is. His last question here. When the smoke clears next year and he's finally done full-time as a pro wrestler, how would you analyze the career of the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson / Daniel Bryan? This is a man who wrestled across 3 big promotions, 2 of them the wrestling promotions in America, as well as multiple independent wrestling promotions, including co-founding Evolve Wrestling, which included talented men like TJ Perkins, Johnny Gargano, Zack Sabre Jr., Timothy Thatcher, Keith Lee, Matt Riddle, Austin Theory, and many other gifted athletes. He's wrestled in the main event of 2 WrestleManias, one of them being one of my personal favorites, WrestleMania 30, and delivered in both. He debuted in All Elite Wrestling with one of the most non-WWE debuts in the last 20 years, one of the best non-WWE debuts in the last 20 years, and would go on to have banger after banger after banger after banger, and he's still going incredibly strong with multiple Match of the Year candidates this year alone. How would you analyze his legacy, and is he in the top 20 in the world today? Is he in the top 20 in the world today? I mean, he might be the fucking number 1 in the world today. I honestly think it would probably be, I don't really rank who the best in the world is today. And I actually have a different tweet about this that I have saved in the drafts that I'll put up one of these days. But in my opinion, it would probably be Will Ospreay number 1 and him number 2. And you can also make an argument with Rollins and a few other people. Ilya Dragunov I love as well. I think Bryan Danielson is as good as anyone in the world right now, if not better than Will Ospreay. I mean, I thought you were going to say top 20 of all time, and even then I would agree with that. Would he be top 5? I mean, overall, no, probably not. I mean, Steve Austin doesn't hold a candle to what Bryan Danielson can do in the ring. But that being said, he's an overall infinitely bigger star than Bryan Danielson ever has been and never will be. Bryan Danielson's better in the ring. So like top 20 wrestlers in the world, or like ever, he would definitely be in the top 20 ever. Top 20 like performers, I don't know. I'm not really sure. Probably though. I mean, like you said, he had success across 3 big promotions, including AEW and WWE. On top in the mid-card, on bottom, blah, blah, blah. Made a lot of money for WWE, came out of retirement, has had this amazing second lease on life in both companies. It's truly incredible. I had another world title reign a couple of years ago that was great in 2019, 2018, whatever it was. I think both. It was 2018 leading into 2019. So yeah, Bryan Danielson, when his career is said and done, as him being done as a full-time performer, he will go down as one of the greatest of all time. And he already will go down as one of the greatest of all time, but especially looking back in retrospect when his career is over. He would have gone down as one of the greatest of all time when he retired in 2016 or 2017, whatever it was. I mean, had he even not come back, he would still have gone down as one of the greatest of all time. Having come back and done what he's done in the past 4 or 5 years, he will absolutely go down as one of the greatest in the world today and one of the greatest of all time, period. This is his last company, I apologize, or his last question. He says, why are bookers so obsessed with overbooking simple matches in all companies, even going back to the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars? There were so many simple matches that were so laughably overbooked that, while it could be fun, became exhausting and lazy. In TNA, it was always Jeff Jarrett matches. Today in WWE, it's the Judgment Day. In AEW, it's a variety of people. Do you feel overbooked matches get booked too often and need to be moderated, or should the overbooking be used only if the story requires it? Listen, I mean, for heels matches, fucking heels are going to cheat. But the problem is, with Jarrett back in the day, with Judgment Day currently, they do it too often. And it's the same thing over and over. If they get clever and unique with it, then it's not as much of an issue. But when they do it so often, it gets old. I mean, I like the fact that Judgment Day, Balor, and Priest, they retained the tag titles clean against the Creed brothers last week on Raw. I really like that. We need to see more of that from Judgment Day, with them winning without interference and winning clean on their own, blah, blah, blah. We need to see that more often. AEW does it way too much, but that's why this Continental Classic has been so, refreshing and such a breath of fresh air, because we haven't gotten those overbooked finishes. A lot of those finishes have been clean finishes. I would love to see more of that going forward. No one will be hurt by it, especially the top talent. It will not kill Danielson or Moxley or anyone of that ilk to lose clean once in a while. So, yeah, it does get overdone in some companies more than others, and they do need to cut back on it, I agree. Now on to the Twitter questions. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine and on YouTube, Real Honesty with John Ritland. He's got his own movie review going up for like 2023 year in review for movies. But we're doing one ourselves very soon here on the channel. So cheap plug, that's going up probably within the next week. We're talking tomorrow on Thursday. So the video should be up at some point this weekend. Keep an eye out for it. His question was, he said, first, he hoped you had a great Christmas. Thank you, John. You as well. He said, with Aquaman 2 signaling the end of this incarnation of the DCEU, would you consider the timeline of movies a success or failure? Also, what would you say were the 3 best and worst films of the entire DCEU era? Good question. I'm more of a Marvel guy, so I haven't seen all the DCEU movies. I haven't even seen Batman vs. Superman. And I think that was one of, like, the worst ones, I believe. I don't know. I haven't seen that, and I've never seen it, so I can't really comment on that one and other ones. I would say overall it was a failure. I think a lot of people recognize some of those movies had great potential and they just amounted to nothing. All the recasting, missed opportunities, bad movies that just kind of ruined the reputation of the DCEU. Not all of the movies were bad, and some of them were just actually very good. I would say, I mean, it was a success in creating some new stars, I guess, new characters. I know this isn't wrestling, but overall it ended in such like a whimper. I mean, they're rebooting for a reason. James Gunn is not continuing because he realizes this shit is terrible and they have to move on. If it was such a success, they wouldn't have moved away from it the way that they did. And it's not like it blew off in this glorious way. I haven't seen Aquaman 2 yet, and I saw Flash and I liked it. I know a lot of people didn't think it was a great movie, and that's fine. But it's not like it had this Endgame-esque type thing. It was kind of just one giant fucking mess. So definitely a failure. As far as the 3 best and the 3 worst that I've seen would be the first Suicide Squad from 2016. Justice League, doesn't matter who it's by. I don't care if it was the first one, the Zack Snyder one I thought was even worse, actually. They were both fucking awful. The second one was just way too long. That was probably for like the hardcore fans. That shit, I'll tell you right now, was not fucking for me because that shit was terrible. The third one would have to be Wonder Woman 1984. I thought that movie was just the drizzling shits. And I really liked the first one, which is why for my top 3 best DCEU movie, DCEU, there we go, movies. Again, of the movies that I've seen, which is probably more than half, I didn't really care for Aquaman, the first one. I haven't seen the second one. I probably will. Haven't seen it. Don't really care. The top 3 best to me were the second Suicide Squad movie that they came out with in 2021. That was awesome. That's probably my favorite, to be honest with you, easily. Wonder Woman from 2017, that exceeded my expectations. And the third one, probably Shazam. Black Adam wasn't great. I enjoyed it enough. I didn't really care too much about Aquaman. I liked The Flash. Wouldn't put it in my top 3, the movie that came out this year. I'm trying to think what else. What are the other ones? Black Adam. Shazam 2 I thought was okay. Yeah, it would probably be the second Suicide Squad, easily number 1 for me. And then, what was the other one I just said? Fucking Shazam would be 3, and then 2 would be Wonder Woman. That's probably what my ranking would look like. I haven't seen Man of Steel. I know people are probably thinking, oh, what about Man of Steel, the Superman? I haven't seen it. I know people are like shocked by that, but I'll probably have to go back and watch it at some point. His next question, do you think AEW will reveal who the devil is at World's End, or will they try to stretch this out longer? Also, do you think there's any way the company cannot make this storyline a complete flop, or is it doomed to fail? This shit is always doomed to fail. We've talked about it before, but like this masked men shit in any wrestling company, when you drag it out for as long as they have and shove it down your throats for as long as they have, it's almost always a fucking failure. Retribution was very similar among other angles they've done in the past. It's usually bad. And Tony Khan has not made a lot of great booking decisions this year to make me think, all right, I have faith that it's going to be done properly. No, I honestly don't. I don't have a lot of faith this is going to be paid off properly. Adam Cole, to me, would make the most sense, but I think he's hurt for a very long time. And I don't want him being the devil if he can't do anything. So, I mean, he was also standing up in a lot of the segments that we've seen the devil in. How can he stand up if the guy's on fucking crutches right now? That doesn't make any sense either. If it's like MJF or Joe or Jack Perry, who cares? Dolph, who cares? I mean, you might care. I don't give a fuck personally. So I think it probably is doomed to fail. I don't want to be completely negative. I think there's a chance they can reveal it and it's going to be a satisfying conclusion. It'll be cool and make for better programming in 2024. I'm not that optimistic about this angle because I feel like the masked men bullshit rarely pays off. Usually does not pay off, and rarely does it ever end up being worthwhile. So I'm going to say it won't, but I would love to be proven wrong. His last question here. What would you say were the 5 best crowds for a wrestling show in all of 2023? Good question. I think number one's got to be Puerto Rico Backlash. Easily. Not even close. I mean, that show is awesome, and the crowd had a lot to do with it. That crowd was a fucking anomaly. I mean, they've had a lot of great crowds this year, WWE has, and selling out a lot of the places they've been to. That being first and foremost. The atmosphere that night, not even having been there, was electric. So that was a great show. That would be one. In no other real order, London for All In and Money in the Bank were 2 great crowds and 2 great atmospheres. So AEW All In, WWE Money in the Bank, those are 3. 4 would be Montreal, obviously. That would be my number 2, actually. I was there for that one, the SmackDown before Elimination Chamber with RJ, one of my favorite wrestling trips I've ever taken. And then the pay-per-view that Saturday was awesome as well. The crowd was amazing. So that would be my 2. I know I'm not ranking them, but those would be my top 2. And then for the 5th one, either Chicago Survivor Series solely for that CM Punk return or Mania. I thought Mania had a really good crowd overall. I was there, so I couldn't hear it on TV because I was at the event. But I thought overall they had a great crowd, especially with how the main event of the first night ended. I thought they were pretty into that. I'm trying to think of other shows that AEW's done. Their crowds are usually pretty good. All Out was a really good show. I don't remember the Chicago crowd playing a big part in how great that show was, so I can't really say them on that show. Same thing with Survivor Series up until the Punk return at the very end, although they weren't a bad crowd either. With AEW, I'm trying to think. Maybe Forbidden Door? Probably Forbidden Door, maybe in Canada. That was the Canadian, that was in Toronto, was it not? So maybe Forbidden Door. It's kind of hard to say for that 5th slot. At UWagoo91, their first question was, your thoughts on GYV set to appear in TNA? I think it's great. I think they're a perfect fit for TNA. They're bigger than NWA. Them just being banished to Ring of Honor would be a fucking waste of what they can do. They already have a lot of nothing tag teams. They don't need GYV on that roster. They don't even defend the fucking tag titles on Ring of Honor anyway right now, so what's the point? AEW, they'd be lost in the shuffle. It'd be cool at first, but they'd probably get lost in the shuffle. WWE, obviously not. So TNA is probably the best landing spot for them right now. I don't know if they're going to Japan or some shit, but I think it's cool. I think it's cool they're going there, and we'll see if they sign there ultimately. His second question, your thoughts on Chelsea Green. She's honestly been one of the biggest MVPs for that women's division in 2023. She was tag team champion for a while, but not even that. I mean, her character work was great. She went from someone that was coming back, I didn't really care to see back. I mean, I think Chelsea Green's good, but she's not as good as a lot of the women they have. But that at the same time, she's not as good in the ring as many other women, but she's a far better character. I didn't even like the hot mess stuff in TNA. I thought that stuff sucked. So when she came in as the Karen character, it sounded bad at first, but she's really taken it to a whole other level. And it's been a lot of fun this year. So she's honestly been one of the one of the biggest success stories for that women's division in WWE in 2023. She's been excellent, and I hope it continues in 2024. Can't remember many great matches she had, but like the character work and being entertained by Chelsea Green, I can absolutely say she's held up her end on that one for sure. At UWagoo91, their next question. If Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams were to feud, would that be the former's send-off from NXT? I mean, it probably would be. I think Hayes could go up tomorrow to the main roster and do well. They got to do the Trick feud first, though. They can't have him on SmackDown and NXT simultaneously like Dragon Lee was for a little while. They got to have him in NXT full-fledged until that feud is over, probably over Mania weekend. Could they finish it up at Vengeance Day and rush it? Sure. I mean, you could do the first match on that show and then run it back Mania weekend and Stand and Deliver, and then a Trick go over there. That's probably what I would do. But I would probably think that, I would probably say that Trick loses the first match, wins the second one, and then Hayes goes up in the draft after WrestleMania. That's probably what I would say. But they have to feud first before Hayes can go to the main roster. That much is for sure. Next question from @noob_n_co_TV. Their question was, I know I'm going to say this because I'm an Asuka fan, but why can't everyone be happy about Asuka? She's more happy being with her friends, Io Sky and Kairi Sane. But a better question is, what's more important to Asuka, being friends or winning championships? I'm glad you admitted that you asked the question because you're an Asuka fan. But no, listen, I agree. I don't know who's shitting on Asuka right now, so I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to. I've been very honest about Asuka's work, not as far as like her being bad in the ring, but like if I'm fucking bored by the character, I'm fucking bored by the character. And that hasn't been the case this year. I think 2023 overall was a really good year for Asuka. She's in Damage Control, working with Kairi again. She was the women's champion for a few months, having some really, really good matches this year with Bianca, including at WrestleMania. Great showing in the Royal Rumble. The new look in the Rumble was cool. Still rambling in Japanese, not a big fan of that. But overall, she's come across great this year. And I've enjoyed Asuka more this year than probably any other year in the past 4 or 5 years. So I think she's been doing well, and like you said, she's with her friends. So who's really to complain, honestly? At JDJCW555, Jeremiah's question was, with 2023 coming to an end, what were the best and worst pay-per-views PLEs of this year? Oh man, I mean, this is tough. I ranked the WWE ones for a Bleacher Report article a couple of weeks ago. My number one for WWE would be WrestleMania. I mean, it was the greatest pay-per-view. I mean, it was the greatest PLE they put on all year. One of the best Manias, I think, from start to finish, both nights. And it's tough to rank it because it has 2 nights. In my opinion, of all time. So that to me was number one. I think that was the best pay-per-view, period. Montreal Elimination Chamber comes very close. AEW also had a lot of great shows. WrestleDream was probably their best. All In was not their best, but I enjoyed the show. All Out was a lot better than I thought it would be. All Out ended up being a pretty great fucking show. Full Gear was enjoyable. Revolution was enjoyable. Forbidden Door was a great show, too. I mean, it's hard to limit it to just 5. WWE shows. Backlash was awesome. Backlash might be number 2, actually, over Elimination Chamber. It's hard to say. SummerSlam, Payback, those shows were okay. I like SummerSlam. I enjoyed SummerSlam, but Payback, Fastlane were okay. Survivor Series was pretty good. What else was earlier this year? The Rumble was pretty good. Night of Champions was solid. Money in the Bank was a great show. I would say the best pay-per-view all year for me was WrestleMania 39. For AEW, I mean, we're not doing by company, but if it was by company, the number one for them would probably be Forbidden Door, but WrestleDream might be a close second because that was also a great show. At Misdemeanor 6, their last question of the, not only of the episode, but last question of the year. And it has to do with the Butcher and the Blade, funnily enough. They said, do you know what is happening? Do you know what is happening with the Butcher and the Blade? Is one of them injured, or are they leaving AEW? Funny question to end on. But no, they're not leaving the company as far as I know. I know the Bunny left the company a couple months ago, about a month or so ago. With her, I mean, I think it was a mutual decision. They say that with everyone, so I don't really know what the case was there. But the report was from Fightful that they were not gone from AEW and they were not looking to leave. They might at some point. I don't know when their deals are up, but the Bunny is gone. With them, what's funny is that clearly you did not watch Ring of Honor, and I don't blame you, but that's where they are right now. The Butcher and the Blade are in Ring of Honor. Anyone that you don't see on WWE, on AEW TV right now are probably in Ring of Honor, if they haven't already been let go. Some people have been let go, but a majority of them have not been let go and are just in Ring of Honor, so that's where they've been. There's no tag titles to compete for because the champions are fucking MIA. MJF and Adam Cole, one of them's hurt, the other one's probably hurt too. So the belts are just kind of in limbo right now. They're probably losing them tonight, is my guess, on Dynamite. And the 2 masked men will be revealed as like the Kingdom or something, probably on Saturday. That would be my guess. They got to lose those fucking belts, though. I mean, it's ridiculous. They're not even defending them at this point because Adam Cole's hurt and MJF is probably hurt as well. So I would go, for sure, I would think the Kingdom are going to win them. But anyway, with the Butcher and the Blade, there's no championships until then to compete for. Even then, the Kingdom are heels. The Butcher and the Blade are heels. They're probably not vying for the belts at that point either. So it's tough. But I think they're probably just going to stay put in Ring of Honor and stay busy there. I don't really give a fuck about the Butcher and the Blade personally, but they clearly have nothing more to do in AEW because they've done all they can do there aside from winning the titles, and that's not going to happen. So Ring of Honor might be the best place for them right now. And that's going to do it, guys, not only for this episode 526, but for the year as well. Episode 526 here today for December 27th, 2023. Thank you guys, as always, for this show and every show in 2023, for sending in your questions. It's been an awesome year for the show. I'm sure, I didn't count, but I'm sure we got more questions this year than any other year in the history of this show. 2023 not only marked 10 years of the program, but 500 episodes as well. Awesome milestone. We did that really fun live stream with Alexis back in June. The audio sucked because my mic wasn't plugged in, which was awful. So hopefully the next one that we do, probably for maybe not 550, but probably 600, we can make that one live as well. That won't be until 2025, so we got a long way to go. But until then, thank you guys so much for your support of the show. It means a lot, and I greatly appreciate it. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll be sure to include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed your Christmas and your holiday, and well, had a very happy New Year as well. We'll be back next Wednesday with the first full episode of 2024 right here on hashtag AskGSM for episode 527. Until then, guys, have an awesome one. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Happy New Year, and I'll catch your ass down the road.